What I want to talk about is the accomplished life, and it's sort of the art of getting more done. I don't know about you, but I think we live in a world where we're constantly trying to get as much done as we can, and it's like there's never enough time, right? Like there's constantly phone calls, there's things being pulled upon us in many different directions, and it's really hard to stay on top of everything. And so what I want to do today is talk about some things I want you to start doing as soon as possible, and some things I want you to stop doing in order to not only get more done, be more productive, but ultimately it will allow you to be happier, quite frankly. And I think we'll dig into how being happier can actually make you more productive as well. Now, before we get started, I want to start with a quote. And it's one of my favorite quotes in the world. If you can go to the next slide, please. Is the greatest distance in the world is the distance between I know and I do. And I know this is true because I know without a doubt how to have six-pack abs. I know for sure. I know what I need to eat. I know the workouts I need to do. I know that I need to stop drinking beer on any occasion. I know how to have six-pack abs. I do not have six-pack abs. I do not do the work. I am unwilling to do the things I need to do, even though I know it. And I think there's a lot of times in our life that there are many things in the world that we're like, yeah, I know how to do it. It's not, the issue is not knowledge. The issue is execution, right? And so one of the things I will tell you is today, I'm going to say some things and you're going to go, yeah, I know that. But when you hear that internal voice, I want you to challenge yourself and say, okay, I know it, but am I doing it? And if I am doing it, could I do it more? And if I am doing it, could I do it more consistently? And I find in my experience, the answer in many of those things is almost always yes. So be on the lookout for that voice in your head that says, yeah, I know that. Next slide, please. The thing that I want to just quickly touch on is in most of the work that the folks who are on this conference do is if we want to be more productive and we want to be more happy, it's not about jamming more into our calendar. We generally have plenty of things on our calendar. It's about taking care of our brain. It's about kind of nourishing that part of our body because most of us, we have to think creatively. We have to deal with stress. We have to deal with employees. We have to deal with kids. We have to deal with spouses, whatever it is. And when our brain is operating at a higher level, we're going to do better in our job, in our career, in our life. And so the thing I want to talk to you about today is really working on how we do a better job of taking care of our brain. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start with the things that I would encourage you to start doing if you want your brain to be optimized so that you can get more done and be happier. First up, get more sleep. That's right, get more sleep. I always get, this is funny because it's a counterintuitive thing. When I tell people to get more done, generally they think I'm going to tell them, hey, we need to jam more into our calendar. We need to pack this. We need to do this. And I think there are going to be several things I tell you today that are a little bit counterintuitive. And this is number one. So studies will tell you that most folks in the world today need somewhere between 7 to 9 hours sleep to perform optimally. I'm about an 8-hour a night guy. What studies will also tell you, and this is from the book Brain Rules by Dr. John Medina, is that if you go one night, let's say you're an 8-hour a night sleep person and you get 4 hours of sleep, you really cut that down, whether the kids were up or you were traveling or you're grinding on your newest project, if you cut that back to 4 hours, it decreases your brain capacity by 40%. Let me say that again. One night of lack of sleep decreases your brain capacity by up to 40%. If you do it for a second night in a row, it decreases your brain capacity by an additional 40%. By the third night, I tell you, I am a talking monkey. And I think it's so interesting because it's counterintuitive to what we tell people, right? It's like, you got to hustle, you got to grind, and hard work's a part of it. Don't get me wrong, but you got to hustle, you got to grind. And I always think back to my time in college. I know it was a long time ago, but my time in college when that finals week, when we look at college campuses and some of the brightest minds across the country are walking around campuses like zombies. Why? Because they're cramming and they're pulling all-nighters and they're not getting enough sleep. And it turns out that studies will tell you that if you want to perform better on those finals that they are working so hard to perform on, they should just look at the stuff before they go to sleep, get 8 hours of sleep, and then wake up and look again. They will actually perform better. So if you want to get more done, you want to be happier, you want to deal with stress better, get more sleep. Next up, get more exercise. Exercise makes you smarter. Now, if you are one of those people and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to exercise or I don't exercise enough, I get it. But this is another counterintuitive one because this takes time. But from the same book, The Brain Rules by Dr. John Medina, here's a real quick thing. Essentially what happens with your brain is fed by blood vessels, okay? And so when you are exercising, blood is going into that brain. Brain is delivered by those blood vessels, sort of like a highway. And just like highways, just like alleys, we get potholes, we get broken roads. So when you exercise, it actually sort of paves the road. It makes for the delivery to go better. And the coolest part is that when you exercise, it actually paves new roads. So more blood goes into the brain, thereby exercise makes you smarter. Now, it's important you don't need to run a marathon for this to be the case. If you can just raise your heart rate by 20 minutes by a little bit, you'll have a similar effect. So it doesn't mean you're trying to get those six-pack abs I was talking about. It just means you want to increase that level. It's one of the reasons that taking a walk in the middle of the day can really elevate your creativity. So if you want to get more done, you want to be more productive, get more exercise. Next up, be more intentional. Yes, this is about goals. Another study will tell you that you are 83% more likely to achieve a goal if you have it, come up with a goal, and you've written it down. But the other part of this is that only 3% of our culture have their goals written down. Why is that? I mean, that's kind of crazy to me when you think about it. It's like we know based on the studies that you're more likely to get what you want if you put it down there and you write it down, but most people don't do it. And so it begs the question, why? And so one of the things I think is it's like people think they're doing it wrong. And I just want to tell you that goals are deeply personal. If you are writing your goals down, you're not doing it wrong, right? They're your goals. But I am one of those people that I think that because like SMART goals, we've heard of SMART goals, and there's nothing wrong with SMART goals. But again, I think that if you use those rules against yourself, then you're not, and it holds you back, then that's not the point. The whole point is just to change your behavior and move you toward the goal that you want, right? So for years, my number one goal every quarter or every year was to become a better husband and a better father, which is great, right? But it's really hard to measure. But what I do know is when I saw that goal, it affected my behavior. It changed the way I looked at things. And that's the point of the exercise. So what I would encourage you to do is to take the time at the end of this conference. You've got your PDF. Spend some time thinking about where you want to affect your life. Now, one of the things that I do is most people set goals and they say, hey, they're the two F's, right? It's finance and it's fitness. I want to have $1 million and six-pack abs. And that's great. But I find that if you want to have a well-balanced life, you need well-balanced goals. So I try to operate from the 5 F's: fitness, finance, family, faith, and fun. And each quarter, and I do them quarterly, I come up with one goal in that area. Now, sometimes there's overlap, like a family vacation might be there. But I'm telling you right now, if you do not create the movie that is your life, you'll be playing a role in someone else's. So be intentional. Next up, morning rituals. I'm going to go quick here. Intentional morning routines and rituals, I think, are important. Most of us have these rituals. Most of us have these routines, but they're not serving us. What I've found is, like, I know I need to work out in the morning, but if I roll out of bed and throw my shoes on and go out running, I'm going to keep that up for about a week, and then I'm going to stop because I hate it. For me, I figured out that if I wake up, I read something inspiring, I have a couple cups of coffee, I get myself ready, then I feel like working out. So I've created a routine, so that's what I do. I even go so far as to eat the same breakfast every single day at our local hospital. I eat the same thing. They don't even have to ask me. It is a part of that routine because I want to have protein. I don't want to get myself outside of this because the fact is, I'm making so many decisions in a day. So I've created a morning ritual that I do every day that moves me toward being more productive. Next up, and that leads me to meditation, another counterintuitive thing that takes some time. But if we want great brain health, taking the time to do this is important. This, by the way, is why morning routines are really important for me, because this does not come naturally to me. I grew up in a household where this was not something we talked about. Mindfulness was not an exercise that was going on, right? But every time I read books or I watched documentaries, I saw the people who I admired. They always talked about how, well, I take time to meditate. I take time for mindfulness. And it has been a game changer for me because it allows me to understand that every single thought I have is not true, not necessarily true. It's also not a dictation from God, right? It's just, there are things that they come through and I am able to separate myself from my thoughts. And it makes my brain more healthy. I'm able to deal with stress better. I'm able to deal with creativity more. And so by starting the time and building it into my morning routine of taking the time to meditate, it really helps me be more productive, be more creative, and frankly, be happier. Next up, gratitude. We've heard this a couple different times today. So I want to talk about a formula that I think our culture has wrong, right? And that formula is if you work hard plus success, you have success, then you're going to be happy. And my guess is, I can't see everybody, but everybody should know that's not true. And it's something we've been sold, and it's just a fake narrative. It's just not true, because we all know people who have worked hard, they're successful, and they're miserable. We need to flip this, right? We need to flip the formula and say, if we are happy and we work hard, we're more likely to succeed. So there's actually a really interesting study on doctors, those people who are the smartest people, most educated people in our culture today. They did a study where they gave doctors lollipops, literally lollipops, right before they walked in to meet with clients. Now, they weren't allowed to eat the lollipops, which I thought was funny because they thought, well, the sugar might throw off the results. They literally just gave them a lollipop. They put it in their pocket. The doctors who got a lollipop actually were more accurate in their diagnosis, seeing the patients. Putting a tiny boost of positivity into your brain before you do work, especially stressful work, can help your results. Students who were about to take the SAT and they thought positive thoughts about it, people will say, oh, that's frou-frou. By doing that, by priming your brain for good results, those students had better results on their SATs. Now, so what I'm telling you is by putting a boost of positivity or happiness in your brain before you do something stressful, it will help you. Now, one of the challenges is I hear people who are more pessimistic or cynical. They're like, oh, great, I'm not a positive person, so I guess I'm just screwed. No, you're not. That's where gratitude comes in. So one of the things I know to be true is that you can't hold on to two thoughts at the same time. You can't be negative and grateful at the same time. So I encourage everybody to do a gratitude journal each day. Start looking for things in your life that you are grateful for. And I will tell you, I think that the first couple, 3 days, it's going to be really easy. They're going to be the low-hanging fruit, your spouse, your job, your parents, your whoever. But a funny thing happens after you have to start looking. I call it the red Toyota effect. It's like you go to get your red Toyota. You've never seen anybody in town with a red Toyota, and then you get one, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, there's red Toyotas everywhere. It's because you've told your subconscious mind it's important. It's your reticular activating system, your RAS, saying, ooh, that's really important. I'm going to point it out every time it shows up. It was always there. Your subconscious brain had just never told you it. You'd not told it was important. The same thing happens with gratitude. The same things that happens with things that you are excited about in your life. And so when you start looking for reasons to be grateful, you tend to find reasons to be grateful. So start doing a gratitude exercise on a consistent basis, and things to be grateful for will continue to show up. Next up, take action. Nothing good happens until somebody takes action. And so there's a great book. It's one of my favorite books called The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. It's a simple concept. And sometimes that's the thing. When we hear simple things, we're like, oh yeah, that's too easy. And I've found sometimes the most simple answer is the right answer. So Mel Robbins talks about the idea that when we set our goals, that's why we talked about that earlier, and you get a nudge from the universe that says, hey, you should be doing something. So let's say you wanted to get into shape. You walk into your living room, you get nothing, right? It's not a nudge. It doesn't tell you to do something. But if you walk by the gym, you oh man, I should go work out. Well, what Mel tells us is that we have 5 seconds. 5 seconds to take action on that nudge. 5 seconds to take action on that, where our brain will talk us out of it. right? The brain his job is to keep you comfortable and keep you alive. And so all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't have my gym clothes. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, there's going to be a bunch of muscle heads in there. I don't want to do it. And within 5 seconds, you're gonna be like, I just won't do it at all. And look in the mirror, folks. We've all done that, right? I know I have. So her trick is to count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then blast off into action. When you get one of those nudges based on a goal that you know you want to do, hijack your brain with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and take action. And it will really start to propel you forward. In any of these ideas I've put so far, the starts, when you get nudged to do something, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action. Next up, we've talked about the things we wanted to start. Let's talk about the things we want to stop doing. First up, stop hitting, you can go to the next slide. Stop hitting the snooze button. Stop hitting the snooze button. We all know this, right? But there's some science behind it. So it hijacks us because, we set for 6 in the morning and then we hit the button, it's 9 minutes. We hit the button, it's 9 minutes. All of a sudden our whole morning's screwed up, right? But the science behind it is that we sleep in 1.5-hour cycles. And the big challenge is when we hit that snooze button and we try to fall back to sleep for 9 minutes, our body thinks we're falling back to sleep for 90 minutes, which is one of the reasons why a lot of times when we hit that snooze button, we feel groggy the rest of the day because we've hijacked our biology here. So if you want to get more done, it's a simple thing. When that time hits, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hop up out of bed. Stop hitting the snooze button. Next up, stop multitasking. It is the great myth of our world, folks. In this, by the way, I totally get it. There are people in the audience right now who are going, I'm great at multitasking, and I get it. There's more studies about this than there are anything else in this presentation. Multitasking does not work. It doesn't work. It's not the way our brain works. And now it's really important to note that when I say this, I'm talking about focused activity. Yes, you can drive and listen to a radio at the same time. Yes, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, but you can't do deep work. And that's what's key. And there's study after study saying if you're doing deep work and you get pulled off of it, it can take you up to 21 minutes to get back into flow. And now, I know that this is a women's conference, and so there are a lot of women listening to this, and they're saying, this is a guy talking to me, and you are right. Here's the bad news is the people who think that they are great at multitasking. Studies will tell you that they're actually worse. However, many pushbacks I get is say, well, I'm a woman and we're better at multitasking. You're right. The studies will tell you you are right, but you're not good at it. You just stink at it less than men. It's still not a productive way to go to work. So I want to encourage you, if you want to get more done and quite frankly, be happier, start to cut out multitasking. Start to batch that time so you can do that deep work that you need to do, that you can, like if you're writing a blog, if you're making sales calls, if you're doing things that take real focus, batch that time so that you can really focus on them. So stop multitasking. Next up, stop comparing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because Stephanie spent some time on this. It's so good. Comparison is the thief of joy. And the reality of it is, I think social media has made it worse, but it's been around forever. And keeping up with the Joneses is something that we've heard about forever. And I think the important thing to note with social media is I love the quote that says, remember that you're comparing everybody else's highlight reel to your behind the scenes, right? Let me say that again. You're comparing everybody else's highlight reel to your behind the scenes. You know that the bad things that are going on in your life, and then you're comparing that to the well-curated vacation pictures of your friends. And so it's just not productive and it doesn't make you happy. And so I want to encourage you to listen to what Stephanie had to say and stop comparing. Next up, stop complaining. This is rampant in our world today. It feels like everybody has a reason to complain. Everybody's looking to play the victim. I just want to encourage you to stop complaining. The only people that want to be around complainers are other complainers. If you want to lament a challenge to me, I'm here for it as long as we're looking for ways to find solutions. I actually just had a conversation with somebody in my family this week, and they said, well, we don't like to tell you things that aren't positive. You like positive things. I'm like, well, positive people don't miss the fact that there are potholes. We just want to think about how we can fill the potholes. We don't want to just drive around complaining about the potholes. So I would encourage you, if you want to be more productive and more happy, stop complaining. And I think it's really important too, is that complaining creates a habit loop in your brain. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I used to complain about the cold. I didn't realize it until one of my employees said something to me about it. They're like, "Wow, you complain about it a lot." I was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I was doing it." So I made a commitment to not complain about the cold that year. And I live in Ohio, so sometimes it's chilly in the winter. And until I said, okay, I can't say that it's too cold. I can't say God, I can't complain about it. I didn't realize how much I was doing it. And when I started changing, and I changed my language around it, I was like, oh, it's brisk. This is really going to wake me up today. That sounds hokey, but it changed my mindset about every morning. And so if you want to be more productive, you want to be happier, stop complaining. It can be more difficult than you think, but it can make a big impact. Next up, stop part-timing. This is one of my favorite ones. So I think that the most overused word in the English language today is the word busy, right? And if you don't believe me, try to go the next week or so without using the word busy. We don't use it. We use it as a descriptor of everything now. How are the kids? Busy. How's work? Busy. How's home? Busy. Busy is not the goal, right? It's productive is the goal. Happy is the goal. Joyful is the goal. Blissful. But I think we use busy almost as an excuse. And I'm going to tell you right now that most people are not too busy. They're not. They just have a calendar full of things they actually don't care that much about. We say yes to everything we are asked of, and many of those things do not push us toward the life we want. So if you want to go to the next slide, I want to give you a rule. When you are asked to do the next thing, if it's not a hell yes, then it's no, right? Because when we get a project that we're super excited about, we make time. Or we don't make time, and I think it's really important. We don't make time because of things on our calendar that we actually don't give a damn about, and that's a shame. So start to fill your calendar with things that you're passionate about. If it's a hell yes, then you're perfectly fine doing it. If it's that PTO meeting or that committee meeting that you're like, oh, I guess, I'm happy that the community's doing that, but I'm not passionate about it. You're not going to bring your best self to it. You're not going to do your best work, and you're going to be frustrated. You have to go to every meeting. So start to curate that calendar about things that you're really excited about. You're not too busy. You just have a bunch of things you don't care that much about. Okay, so I'm going to go through these last few rapid fire because I know we wanted to leave time for questions. Number one, lift the heavy stuff first. Most of us spend the whole day putting off the thing that we know we need to do. I learned this lesson from my dad really early. Lift the heavy thing first. Everything else will seem lighter. Next up, focus on the things that are most important. Again, this kind of leads back to our calendar. You should be filling your calendar with the 3 or 4 things that move the needle the most within your organization. It will make the most impact. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time scrolling Facebook or checking email or doing what? I do all that stuff, by the way. When you focus your efforts on the things that bring the most value, you get the most return. Next up. Touch it once. This is the thing I struggle with the most. I think we get that email and we're like, oh, you know what? I want to give that some thought. I'm going to get back to them. And then a week goes by and you haven't gotten back to them. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get back to them right away. And you write the email that you would have written had you replied to them in the first place. You want to get more done? Just touch it once, move on with your life. Next up. Make the most of every minute. Every once in a while, we'll get a cancellation on our calendar, and I constantly have a running list of things I need to do, and then I immediately go, oh, I've got 15 minutes. Which one of these things can I get done in 15 minutes? And I fill it rather than just dawdling with things that don't bring me productivity and don't bring me joy. By the way, one of those might be take a walk around the block and get some fresh air, and that's fine too. But make every minute count as much as you can. Next up. Put it on the calendar. Once you decide you want to chase a goal, you want to meet with a client, you want to work on your book, put it on the calendar. I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. So when you put it on your calendar, it makes it real. I was telling my assistant, hey, I want to meet with these clients. And she said, hey, what do you want to meet with them about? I'm not sure yet, but I will come up with that important meeting. Let's just get it on the calendar. Force yourself into action in that way and you'll get more done. Okay. That was rapid fire. I think we have, let's see, can you go to the next slide there real quick? Okay, go one more slide. And I want to, before Deb asks me any questions, I did want to give just a little value here. Target Marketing Playbook for those who are in marketing or any of this sort of thing. This is a free resource. If you want to check it out, you can scan the QR code and it's all yours. Deb. Sorry.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kirby. Man, I was taking notes like crazy on this one. I'm sure other people were too. What fabulous thoughts. And you just tied it so well with so many different things. We had one question about, can you repeat the categories? Fitness, faith, family, fun.
Fitness,
family, finance. That's it.
Finance, family, faith, and fun. Yep. Yep. And again, I think what I'll do in the goal side is I do them every 90 days because I'm a little bit attention, a little ADD. I like to have a shorter window that allows me to kind of chase things in a shorter window of time. But by allowing those sort of things, it's amazing how you're like family vacations get away.
Oh.
Right. And so by at least putting that on my radar, I'm just more consistent with it.